Police officers, why did you quit your job? Some people like to say that police officers aren't trained to be racist, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I first enlisted 15 years ago, wanting to do good and help society, but on my literal first day on the job, I got told rule number 1. There are certain people that require us to use preemptive aggression. The sergeant never mentioned who these certain people were, but it was pretty obvious to everyone in the room who he was talking about. My first ride-along was with an officer who'd worked here 20 years in what our sergeant called a high-risk area. We pulled over a black individual named for going 7 miles over the speed limit. Thompson called for backup before we even made the stop and approached the car with his hand on his weapon. The man in the car kept both hands visible on the steering wheel. He was polite and had his license ready, but Thompson ordered him out of the car anyway. When the man asked why he was being arrested, Thompson just said, "Suspicious behavior." 2 backup units arrived and suddenly Marcus was face down on the asphalt with 3 officers on top of him. One of them yanked his arm back so hard I heard something pop. Marcus screamed and his shoulder looked completely wrong. They dragged him to the station claiming he was resisting even though the whole thing was on body cam. My sergeant watched the footage with me later. "See how they always resist," he said. "You hesitate and you die. Academy didn't teach you that, did it?" I went home that night and couldn't sleep. I looked up constitutional law and realized everything Martinez was teaching us violated the 4th Amendment. I tried talking to him privately about my concerns, but he just laughed. He called it rookie idealism and said I'd learn the difference between book learning and street experience. When I found out the man we arrested filed a complaint that got dismissed as frivolous, I knew something was seriously wrong. During our next training session, I decided to speak up. Our sergeant was explaining his preemptive aggression policy when I raised my hand and cited constitutional violations. The room went dead quiet. Martinez stared at me for what felt like forever before asking if I thought I knew better than veterans. He made me stand up and explain to the entire class why I was second-guessing street-tested methods that keep officers alive. The other trainees started avoiding me after that. They'd whisper about whether I was really part of the team and if I could be trusted when things got dangerous. My sergeant began targeting me with poor evaluations, even though my performance was solid. He assigned me to the worst shifts in the most dangerous areas without adequate backup. Word spread that I was soft and couldn't be trusted in crisis situations. The breaking point came during a domestic violence call in a high-risk area. The woman had visible bruises on her face and arms, but she, just like her husband, was pinned down to the ground and yelled at to stay until handcuffed. They were both brought to the station and jailed. It took a lawsuit threat for us to let her out and charge just the man. After that one incident, I couldn't take it anymore. I started secretly recording my training sessions with a hidden device. I documented every constitutional violation and piece of racial bias I witnessed. I filed a formal complaint with Internal Affairs with detailed evidence. I contacted the Police Oversight Commission and civil rights organizations. Internal Affairs started what they called an investigation, which was mostly just procedural interviews. Our sergeant got temporarily reassigned to administrative duties, while the media covered the story for about a week before moving on. Other officers closed ranks and started calling me one of them. Federal investigators showed initial interest, but the case got buried in bureaucracy. Then came the moment that destroyed any faith I had left in the system. Internal Affairs declared their investigation inconclusive, saying there wasn't enough evidence for disciplinary action. My sergeant's union representative successfully argued that my recordings were taken out of context. The department claimed I had attitude problems and difficulty following chain of command. The department implemented a 1-day sensitivity training workshop as their big reform. My sergeant returned to full training duties after his brief administrative review. They wrote new policies that looked good on paper, but nothing actually changed in practice. I faced constant retaliation with dangerous assignments and complete social isolation. Other potential whistleblowers saw what happened to me and decided to keep their mouths shut. That was when I realized the system was designed to protect itself above all else. I thought I was fighting corruption, but in reality, I was just teaching them to hide it better. So I quit. I turned in my badge and gun in.